Okay, we're in the home of Doyle Arp today. Doyle is a longtime resident of Philadelphia and former Loudoun County mayor. But first of all, we want to thank you for allowing us to come in today, Doyle.
Well, you're welcome. Glad to have you.
So tell us about the community you grew up in.
Well, I still live on the same farm I was born on. Back in the day, in the 40s, most of the kids were born at home. So I was born right down the road here, and my dad got a little piece of ground here and built a house up here, and then I bought some off of my grandma and back in the 60s and built this house and lived here. And back in the day, we knew everybody that lived on the road and all that kind of stuff. Those times have changed down through the years. So, but it's been a great community, one that people kind of stayed to themselves, but when there was sickness or death in the families, the community came together for the people and stuff like that. But it wasn't where neighbors were sticking their nose over in your business. So
Right.
It's been a great community to be raised up in and live my life in, my whole life. I've lived here all except for 2 years. I lived in Loudoun for 2 years after I got married and before I got the house built.
But tell me about your family while you were growing up as a youngster.
Well, I had a brother 10 years younger than me, and then of course my cousin Dwayne lived down the road there, and then I had the Udi family. My mom was an Udi, and her brother married my dad's sister, and so I had 6 double first cousins in that family. And of course Dwayne was a double first cousin.
Yeah.
2 brothers married sisters. So we were all kind of raised up in this community and kind of gathered at our grandma's house on Sundays back in them days, and that's how we were raised up. Played together, had a good time, still all friends.
Good, good. Well, tell me about your elementary school. You went to Philadelphia
Went to
Elementary.
Philadelphia. Of course, back then you went first through the 8th, and the bus would come through here about 6:30 in the morning and pick us up and take us to school and drop us off. And then we were the last bus that had come back through picking up, and we'd get back home at 5:30. So we were there from 6:45 till, till 5:15, and then later on, Dad worked in a hosier mill, and he got to where he'd come by and pick us up, to where we didn't have to stay over of evening, because we were in 4-H, NFFA, and things of that nature, and we had little crops that we needed to be working in instead of down at school playing ball all the time.
But tell me about some of your memories at Philadelphia School.
Well, we had a fire little old basketball team, and our 8th grade year, we were playing Browder, and they told us before the game that if we beat them, they'd whoop us when it's over with, and they did. Because we wound up winning the game, but some of our players got beat up pretty bad. I happened to be lucky. When the game was over, I was up on the stage end of the gym playing up in the old high school, and when I got down to go downstairs, the boys was coming back up, and they was all bloodied up and what have you.
That's the old county tournaments they had on the hill.
Yep. We had a lot of good time there. And one of the best memories I have about sports is that Sam Grimes, he had a boy named Wayne, and he'd like to play baseball and stuff, and he'd get us and the Hill boys and the Brewsters together and what have you, and we'd go up to Loudoun and play the VFW team and things like that. So everybody rode in the back of a pickup truck, Sam would come by and pick us up and take us up there. So we had a lot of good times doing stuff like that.
How about, are there any teachers at the school that stood out to you that made a difference in your life?
And I told this lady this, Ms. Evelyn Waller. She was our 7th grade teacher. And to be totally honest with you, we didn't do very much in the 6th grade. We had a lady that filled in, and you know how a bunch of boys and girls are. If they ain't made to do it, they don't do it. So we basically had to make 2 years up at one time, and I didn't particularly care for her during my 7th grade year. But by the time I got into 8th grade, I appreciated what she had done. She brought us through 2 years of it.
Wow.
And was a very stern. I don't know that she ever whipped anybody. And back then paddling was pretty prevalent.
Yeah.
But she could stare a mule down. I mean, that was her thing. When she locked her eyes in on you, you better start straightening up. But, she just an all-around good guy, good lady. Mr. Boss was her 8th grade, and you know, I didn't have a bad teacher except during the 6th grade, and we didn't accomplish anything that year. And back then, that was the year that the fractions were taught and everything like that. And my mother hammered those things into me, and they're still with me today.
Really?
I can divide in my head pretty quick.
Then you went on to Loudon High School.
Yes.
What are some of the memories of Loudon High School?
Well, of course, being from a local county school, we were kind of awed by the boys at Loudon Elementary that we met up with in high school, because we'd played basketball against them and all that stuff through the years, and they were bigger than we were. And one of the main things I remember is when we got there, people like Jack Nichols and the Stooksburg boys and Johnny Stamey and them, they were seniors, and they were men, and we were just kids. And that's one reason I didn't go out for football. Because I didn't want to get beat up. I went out for basketball.
Be like those Browder boys coming back.
Bingo. Yeah, we didn't want no part of that. But they, you know, they treated us well. We became friends. Some of the best friends I've got now is the ones that we played against and we thought they were enemies when we were growing up.
Oh, yeah.
We got to high school and became good friends.
What were some of the activities that you were involved with in high school?
FFA, 4-H, you know.
With Mr. Alexander?
Mr. Alexander was our ag teacher, and I didn't realize it at the time, that later on in life I would use some of the skills that we were taught in there about figuring some trig stuff and things like that, and making saw cuts. I wound up making them in metal cuts, you know, going from wood to metal. So it's one of those things.
So after high school, what was your first job out of high school? Or what did you do after high school?
My first public job, I worked for my uncle all the way through high school in a grocery store business. And then when I got out of high school, Dad and them said I could go to college, but I didn't really care about that. Just wasn't on my radar. I went to work at Vestal in Sweetwater, and worked there for about a year or so, and they asked me if I wanted to go into the tool and die program in the apprenticeship program there. And I was running the press. I was using the dies, but I had no idea about how to build one or anything like that. So I got involved in that and enjoyed it so much that I started taking correspondence courses about drafting and stuff of that nature. And then they opened up a vocational school in Athens of a night, and I went down there for about 3 years.
Okay. So you mentioned that you had worked in a grocery store. Was that at the Arp store?
Yes.
And where some people still refer to it as Arp store. Others, the Blair building.
No, that's
is that the same one?
No. That's down on Main Street. My uncle's store was in there right beside where the shops are at now.
Oh, Charlie Arp's you were
Yeah,
talking
Charlie Arp's grocery store.
about. Okay.
That
Yeah.
was my great uncle that had that one down on Main Street.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about working for your uncle Charlie Arp.
Well, I worked after my freshman year. I started working for him when I got out of 8th grade, and after my freshman year, I started working for him in the afternoons because the Burkos boys came out for basketball, and they was about a foot taller than I was, and I seen that I was going to be riding the pine being part of the time. So I wanted to make money.
Yeah.
And I worked for Uncle Charlie, get off from school, go down there, and then I'd ride home with him when I got through, and then worked all day on Saturday. And he taught us, we were the produce people, we were the meat cutters. I mean, he taught us how to do all the meat cutting and hamburger grinding, sausage grinding, and cutting up chickens. All the chickens came in whole, and if somebody came in with one cut up, well, he taught us how to cut those up. So we learned all the grocery trade right there. And then we'd even checking out people and then turning and putting them in the car. If the lady that was running the cash register was out, we ran the cash register. So he taught us all aspects of dealing with the public.
Did he have his store there before the white store came?
Well, when I was a kid, where the shops are at now, and that was the white store, there was a house that sat there, and the white store was in that building right there beside of that, and he was up next to Southeastern Title in that little slot in there. And then white store, Greer's built that building down there where the shops are at for the white store, and Uncle Charlie moved down there right beside of them.
Okay.
And the reason that he stayed in business for so long was that he did credit business. Of course, you couldn't get buy stuff at the white store on the credit. So that's how small grocery stores survived back then. There were several of them in town. Bridges had one, Lomax, and Ratledge, and then where Edith and Francis's beauty shop's at now, all that right in there. I can't think of that. And then Ryder's had a produce stand right at the back. There was a lot of small people that made a living.
Yeah, up on Ferry Street there was one.
Yep. And one on Church.
Yeah. Before we get too far into this, you told me a story earlier about your dad. In World War II, he did not serve in the Army, but he served his community.
Yes.
So would you tell me how that came about?
Mr. Newman was over and I don't know what his title was, but when you got drafted, that's who you went to see. And Dad went down and he asked him what he was doing, and Dad was farming here on the farm. And he said, well, we need you over here more than we need you over there. And that Dad relayed that story to me, and that's John Arsenham's daddy, Homer's dad, that was over that section at that time.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was admirable that they did that, but it wasn't that Dad didn't want to go. It was just one of those things they told him that they needed people over here raising food.
Yeah, I thought that was a good story.
Yeah.
Now we'll go back to the Pathkiller or Blair building with Arp store. You have a connection with that store as well.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's after my great uncle Wes and his wife Mint, and I remember going there as a kid. Uncle Wes worked over at the chair factory, and Mint would run the store during the day. It's according to what my dad and them always told me. So I remember them, and then their children I remember. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I have reconnected with their grandkids.
Okay, a lot of people might remember you as starting I believe it's called the Loudon Tool and Die Shop. Was that?
Yes.
Tell us how that came about.
Well, I worked at Vestal and had been and came up through the ranks and was actually in management there, and was foreman over the tool and die shop, and I done a lot of work for Fuzz Fur through that shop down there, because him and the Vestals were buds, and if he needs something fixed, well, they'd let him bring it in there and we'd fix it for him. And where they got paid for it or not, I don't know. Didn't care. But I became friends with him. And he kept on to me. He said, "You just need to start you a shop." And I said, "Well, Fuzz, I ain't got no money." And so one day, and I ate lunch with him a lot back down at one of the local restaurants there. And I went in there and he said, "Hey, Sam's found a shop down in Tallahassee, Florida. Said they're wanting us to sell it for them." And said, "Would you be interested in doing that?" Well, at that time, Doyle Arp and Charlie Wendell, we all worked together.
Okay.
And so me and Boyd went down there and looked at it. And we come back and we mortgaged everything we had. Because the equipment, equipment was staying good for it. Banks didn't know anything about tool and die equipment and things of that nature. So me and Charlie and Boyd and Pat went into it in May of '70.
Okay.
And then
so from '75 to how long did it last?
we sold out in '85.
Okay. And where was the location of the tool?
Right where Pete Stimpson's clinic's at now.
Okay.
That corner right there, we owned that corner there, and had a big old. Of course, it had been when Pete was in business, there was a picture there. That was a car dealership there way back in the years, and then there was a grocery store in there and different things of that nature.
Was the garden spot there?
Garden spot was there.
Was that before or after?
That was before us.
Okay, before.
Yeah.
I remember the garden spot.
When Charlie and I sold that out in '85, I guess a year or two later, Pete was looking for a place to put. The clinic was closing. Dr.
Okay.
Barr and Dr. Palm, they were closing the clinic, and he was looking a place for him and Doc Sam to go. And so he bought that and built that, and him and Doc Sam went down there and practiced together for a while then.
So as far as the tool and die business, who were your main customers?
We did a little bit of work for Viscase and Merrimont, but most of our customers were out of Knoxville.
Okay.
Allied Chemical, which was the old Jim Robbins seatbelt place up there, became one of our biggest customers. And back in the time, we had several people working for us because they were throwing a lot of work to us. And then in the late '70s, the economy tanked and the car industry just went south.
Okay.
And that's how I wound up getting in politics. But we did work as far as south as Huntsville, Alabama, and up in the Johnson City area. But we tried to just stay in that Knoxville market because having people on the road all the time, you can't make money if you ain't in the shop working.
Right.
So we just we tried to do that.
So you have good memories about having the business?
It
was a good experience for you.
Yeah, it was.
Now, I'm sure you saw a lot of people in Loudon during the time you were there. Characters of Loudon. You smile right quick. You probably have somebody in mind.
Well, when Doc Blair chose to close his practice, he was Choo Choo's guardian.
Okay.
And he called me and he said, "I need you to come up here at the office. I need to talk to you." So I went up there and he said, I'm closing my practice, and said, "You need to take over being Choo Choo's guardian." I said, "No, I don't either." And then I got to feeling sorry for him. And so I wound up being his guardian for 7 years. And he, there were some interesting stories. I mean, he could, one of the funniest ones was that if Choo Choo didn't take his medicine, he'd get a little bit off balance. And I looked out the side door on the shop one day, and he had a what we'd call a foot tub and had a bale on it, and he was taking water and throwing it out in the middle of the road. And Miss White had a grocery store across the corner there. And so I hollered at him. I said, "Choo Choo, come up here." I said, "What in the world are you doing?" He called me Pops. He said, "Pops," he said, "I've got to go over to Miss White's and get some cigarettes." And he was barefooted. I got to go over and get some cigarettes, and said that their pavement is hot, said I'm cooling it off. I said, "Okay, I can't argue that point." I said, "If you put shoes on, you wouldn't have that problem, though." But some interesting things. I got a phone call one night about 12 o'clock that he had moved all of his stuff out. And this was after he'd moved. This was later on. He had moved up the shop up there, and I went down there, and cops was there, and blue lights on, and he'd just vacated his house. I mean, his furniture sitting out on the sidewalk. And I said, "Gee, what in the world is going on?" He said, "I'm going to have a yard sale tomorrow." I said, "No, you ain't." I said, "Absolutely, you're not having no yard sale." I said, "You got to have that stuff to live." I said, we put all this stuff back in the house, and he spent the night in the pokey till we could get him straightened back out, because if he, and he, you know, his latter years he lived in a nursing home, but people would buy him beer, and if he drank beer and the medicine that he was on, he just, you know, he wasn't dangerous to anybody, except himself, you know, but he didn't have no business staying in that house. He could set it on fire or something. Right. So the cops were gracious enough, and you can't get that done anymore, but they took him and locked him up for a few days till he could get back on balance again.
How about Otis and Odell? What do you remember about
Otis
them?
and Odell, they were the two of the best known guys in Loudon. They ran errands for everybody, and did a lot of things for my uncle. You know, as far as they'd go to the bank, they'd go to the utilities, just whatever needed to be done. And of course, people always tipped them. You know, gave them money and things of that nature. And you know, if they were in town and it was raining, and they were ready to go home, and they walked. Biggest part of the place is everywhere they went. But my Uncle Charlie would, if there wasn't nobody there to take them home, he'd put me or Dwayne one out there to see if them boys got to the house, to see if they got taken care of. And that's, you know, and another thing about Choo Choo, one of the ladies that really helped take care of her, took care of him, was Betty Jo McCoster, because she had a little grocery store over there. And she really helped a lot with taking care of Kenneth.
A lot of people wouldn't know, but Kenneth Justice was Choo Choo's real name.
Right. And one other story about Kenneth. When they started the baseball team down there, of course, G, Batman, was the coach. David Clinton was helping a little bit with it. And of course, we could open up the side door over there and look down there and see. Well, Chew was down there right in the middle of the field. And David Clinton stopped up there after practice that day. They're just getting started. And he said, "Hey," he said, "I know you boys are pretty tight with Chew." Said, "You just need to tell him to stay off the field." Said, "We can't get nothing done down there." Said, "Okay." So that was going to happen. So Chew comes up there, and Charlie gets him over to the side and says, Chew said, "Seen you down there working with them." Said, they're wanting to learn that hook slide." Said, "Now they'll tell you that you can't be out there on the field because TSSAA." Said, "Don't pay no attention to it." Said, "They really want you to help out." So the next day, he was out there running the bases, hook sliding for him. He was a good ball player, you know.
During his time.
In his time, he was a good ball player, knowed a lot about it and what have you. And after that day, we finally told him, said, "Hey, you can't be out there no more." But
Well, when you sold the business, you developed an interest in politics. I guess you probably had an interest in politics for years. So what motivated you to get into local politics?
Well, in '74, Judge McClellan appointed me foreman of the grand jury. And I kept that position for 8 years. And I was the youngest foreman of the grand jury that ever been in Loudon. And then in '78, I ran for county commission.
Okay.
And was serving on there. And then Emmett Carter decided he was going to retire in 1980. And and I hadn't even thought nothing about it. And some of them said something to me about it. And of course, our business was going down. I mean, we were down. We only had four of us working there at that time. And so it became a thing that I thought, well, I'll try that for 4 years and just see what it is. And ran and got elected. And then we did a reappraisal in '83, and some of my good friends that had helped me get elected told me I couldn't get reelected because of the reappraisal. And of course, we just done our job. You know, I mean, it wasn't we was out to skin anybody. We just done our job. And it just put a desire in me to see, well, let's just see if that's what the people want, you know. But I had no intentions of staying after that. I was going to go back to the shop. But after that, I wouldn't call it a threat, but it was, some people weren't happy with some of the things. And so I ran again, and had opposition, and won by a much greater margin than I did in 1980. And then just, you know, just fell in to liking what I was doing, and liked the people I was working with, and it was kind of I strive to keep employees low and technology high. And I'm not a great technology person, but I'm smart enough to know that if we done it that way, we wouldn't have near the problems that you have with human error out there all the time.
So then you made a run for the county mayor.
Did that in 2006.
Wow. So from '78 through until 2006, you were on the county commission?
No, I was on the county commission just for 2 years. You had to resign county commission. In 1980, I ran for property assessor. So I was property
That's
assessor.
right. Okay. I'd forgotten about that, Doyle. Yeah.
For 96. 26 years.
Property assessor. Okay. Yeah, I'd say you probably did make a few enemies. So.
Yeah, you know, I would have people that would tell me that I was going to get beat and what have you, and they'd go home and think about it, and then come back and apologize.
Is that right?
Because you know, they figured out that I was doing it the right way.
Right.
And,
honestly.
you know, nobody likes to pay taxes, but
right.
You know, somebody paid for me and you to go to school.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's my responsibility to pay for my grandkids and your kids and other kids to get a good education too. That's just where the world's set up.
So you served as property assessor for how many years?
26.
26 years. Wow. So then you decide to run for county mayor. I
had always, in dealing with the budget process and things of that nature, it always intrigued me. And the insurance part of it always kind of intrigued me, even when I was in private business and stuff. So just, you know, when George decided he wasn't going to run again, that was something that I wanted to do.
Okay.
And I don't look back on it one bit. I'm proud of what we got done.
So that I was going to get into that. So George Miller served before you.
Yes.
What changes were made to the county while you served that you look back upon and think, well, I'm glad we did that?
Well, advancing the technology of the way we did things. Tracy Blair was the finance director, and she ran a tight ship, and Leo was my purchasing agent, and he ran a good tight ship too. So we tried to stay away from putting a lot of employees. I tried to practice in there what I did in the assessor's thing. If we found somebody that could carry a little bit more load, we'd let them have another title. And of course, it was like pulling hen's teeth to get the commission to pay them. But they'd eventually come along and help boost their pay up a little bit. Just modernizing the different things there. You know, we worked well with TRDA and TAS, two other government agencies that were involved with other counties. One of the things that I tried or talked to some of them about doing was maybe building a regional jail for, I call them bad daddy days or bad check writers, non-violent criminals, and then making a workhouse type thing out of it. But they already done that in Monroe County, and of course, if we'd done something like that, it'd have been out on TRDA land, and Loudon, Blunt, and Monroe controlled that thing, and you know, I just never could get that off. But I still think that we could have saved. We don't need non-violent people mixed in with violent. You know, I mean, that's just one. I'm not been a sheriff. Don't want to be, but I felt like that was one of the things that we could have done that might have alleviated some of the problems.
So, looking back, what was the greatest challenge to being the mayor of the county? You've already given me some in the last few comments, but
when you're dealing with 10 commissioners that pass the budget, I found out that those people are all pretty well entrenched in their beliefs, and you cannot drive those people into doing something. I mean, that's physically impossible. I mean, you can't drive me and you into doing things. But I found out after about a year or so, by just throwing ideals out and maybe letting one of them come up with the same scenario, we accomplished a lot more, and that's okay. I could care less who got the credit for it as long as we got it done, you know. But passing budgets, one of the things that disturbed me the most, we would have county officials that would come in and present a budget, and the budget committee would sit there and agree with them. Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's good. And they wouldn't get in their cart till they'd butcher them.
Really?
You know? Yeah. I mean that may still go on today. I don't know. But now that bothered me, and I would go ballistic on them. Because I'd say, you know, we're all 21-year-old. Every one of us is over that. If you don't like what they're telling you, tell them to their face. You know, don't make them think they're going to get it. And then they're reading the paper they didn't get it. You know. So I think you might have been through some of that too. So
a little bit. That's right. So looking back over your lifetime, who has been the greatest influence on your life?
My dad.
Now, why is that?
His work ethic. We never had a lot of father-son conversations. I was raised up that this is the right way to do it, and I'll show you and get on down the road. But one of the things that And I was raised in a little old 4-room house. It was about 600 yards up the road here. He told me after I got out of high school and started to work, one day out there in the backyard between that and the smokehouse, I'll never forget it. He said, "You see everything that me and your mom's got here?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We worked for every bit of it." He said, "Nobody ever gave us nothing." He said, "If you want anything, it's worth working for."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "You'll take better care of it if you work for it."
Yeah.
He said, just always remember that. And that stuck with me all these years, you know, just his work ethic. I mean, he worked in a hosier mill and he made a living, you know. But he shod horses on the side and in the afternoons and Saturday, and he worked 7 days a week for 3 and 4 and 5 months at a time at the hosier mill. Didn't get no days off. So he made a little overtime money. So we never did want for anything, but you know, I guess we was poor, but we didn't know it. You know, I mean, we had food on the table because we raised a big garden.
Yeah.
I always had a beef to kill, a hog to kill, 4 chickens to kill. I mean, you know, we had a freezer and Mom canned and done that type of stuff. So, but you know, Dad's work ethic and Mom's too. Mom was a hard worker, but after Larry was born, she stayed home and she became a home mom and stayed home and took care of him.
Where did y'all go to church?
Corinth. Been there for years. My grandparents and great-grandparents. See, my great-grandparents on my grandma Arp's side, she was an Arden, and they bought this property here in 1913 from the Houstons over here. And so we've been on this property now for several generations. And I'm the 4th, and Ronnie, my son, lives right up the road here. He's the 5th, and he's got a son who's the 6th. So we got 6 generations here on this place. And we don't farm it anymore. It's a good place. You can come out here about anything you want to and see 8 or 10 deer here in the yard. And we don't have any turkeys anymore. Coyotes that took care of them. So.
If you could write your own legacy, what would you want it to be?
That I've always tried to treat people right. You know, I'm involved in a lot of different community things, but it's always about helping other people. That's my legacy, is to always want to help other people. I mean, for some reason, about 4 years ago, there was an opening up at Lexington on the hospital board, Shrine Hospital Board, and you have to apply for those positions. And I came home and talked it over with Kay, and she said, "Well, that's something you've always been involved in, so why don't you do it?" And I did. I'm tied up with that at least one weekend a month for a hospital board meeting.
How did you get involved with the Shriners?
Well, my Uncle Charlie was a Shriner.
Okay.
And he put Dwayne and I out selling papers when we was 15-year-old. I rode a route with Freeman Russell. The next year, I had my driver's license. And I'm a little older than Dwayne. He didn't have his. So he gave that route to me and Dwayne, and it was down in the Matlock Bend, Tennessee Nationals at now. And so I've been selling papers since I was 15-year-old. And but I didn't become a Shriner until 1982.
Okay.
And then I've been the paper sale chairman 2 times at Corbella, and I'm now on the line up there. You know, and if the good Lord lets me live to 2025, I'll be the potentate, and I'll be 80-year-old when that happens.
Okay.
One of the oldest ones I've ever been through, but it was just a door that the Lord opened up, and I talked it over with the wife, and the Shrine Hospital is a commitment, but that's a marriage up there to that thing.
Why is that so important to you?
Helping kids. Helping kids. I made a little talk at the lodge last night. We're starting a ball program this for my daughters will kill me, but I can't. It's the limits, and it's for kids that physically handicapped and stuff. We'll let them play ball this summer. The city of Loudon's gave them a field down there. And, the good Lord was good to me. I had 4 healthy children, got 6 healthy grandchildren. But I like to see other kids that have deformities and things like that have a smile on their face when they play ball.
Yeah.
And, Kay and I have been blessed to get out and see part of the country through Shrine and see what benefits kids get that their parents have been told their kid had never walked, and we get them in a hospital and they do walk, and that's just, and I'm a pretty tough old bird, but now when a person comes up to me and says, I can walk because of you, I said, no, you can't. No, sorry. You can walk because of the man above, but maybe we helped you get there. It's not, we didn't do that. The good Lord did that through our doctors. And I get a blessing out of that.
That's good. That's good stuff. One other way that you serve the community, this was on a lighter note, more fun note, but you were in the chain gang with Loudon High School football for years.
Yeah.
What are your memories about the chain gang?
Well, I started out, let's see, it was me and Charlie Powell, Coy Blankenship, and Butch Early.
Okay.
And then they come along with the dicky wheel, and Sarah got to be the one that clipped that on the thing.
Yeah.
But the comments that that those 3 rascals could make, because they all played football and they knew the game a lot better than I did, and and you get to be friends with the referees, and a lot of times they'd have us to run the chains out there when knowing good and well it wasn't a first down, or knowing good and well it was 3 footers on the other side, but the coaches at Loudon High School always kept that field immaculate. And of course they had that crown in it, and them guys would say, well, if you'd make this thing flat, we could see better. But we had a lot of good relationships with the referees and things of that nature.
How many years did you do that?
I don't know, several. It just got to where, the kids got out of high school, and I got involved in politics and other things going on. It got to where I couldn't get there on Friday nights and what have you, so I dropped off of it. And I had a good time doing it, but it was time to move on to something else, And that same crew, we always went to all the UT ball games, the home games. We were ushers up there, except Butch. Butch Early was not an usher, but him and his dad always rode up with us, and they'd jockey tickets back and forth up there to see if they could get in for nothing before it was over with.
I didn't realize you were an usher at the UT.
I was up there from 75 to 85.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Anything else we're missing?
I'm sure there is, but I appreciate you coming out and asking me these questions.
Well, it's been an honor. Thank you so much. Yeah, you